Democrats' strategy here?
Right. So Democrats are looking at the polls since the hearings were over. CNN had a poll out today. All the other polls, incidentally, were published before the hearings were done. And the public is in favor of impeaching and removal by 50 to 43. Independents are in favor of impeachment and removal.
Do it.
Okay. Hey, Matt, listen.
Do it.
Once, please don't interrupt me, okay? I know this is your network.
Let's
you
keep
can get away with murder.
We can
please.
debate and let Matt back in then. Matt, go ahead and we'll move on to another topic. Go ahead.
Yeah, Richard, this is a failed strategy because what Nancy Pelosi said at the outset was that they wouldn't have a partisan impeachment. She would go forward with impeachment if it was bipartisan, and they simply failed after 2.5 years of Mueller, and now the shift whiff to find any bipartisanship. So this ship has sailed. I hope you keep trying to make it work because it's just going to be bad politics and good politics for us.
Let Richard have final word on that. Richard, go.
Yeah. And all I'm saying is the polls are consistent. The public is in favor of not just impeachment, but removal. And Matt can kind of interrupt me every single time I open my mouth, and everybody else could as well. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the public is in favor of, again, not just impeachment, but removal after hearing this very damning testimony by people appointed by Donald Trump.
I'll cite the poll in front of me that we used in the last hour, the Marist poll on support for impeachment among independents, Richard, support 42%. Those that oppose 50%.
That was before the hearings were over.
Unsure,
sorry, Sandra.
8%. That was November 11th through November 15th. I'm not omitting
exactly.
that
The hearings ended last week.
Okay.
Look at the CNN poll, which was post the second
We've had
week
3 years of impeachment. All of these polls speak to the moment, which is people are moving away from this idea that they don't have a chance to remove Donald Trump by simply not voting for him.
To quote
it's
the
pretty simple.
congresswoman we had on earlier, time will tell. We've got a holiday week here, and obviously we wait to see what comes from Adam Schiff and the Intel Committee off to the judiciary. We'll see what happens next with all of that. Meanwhile, Robert De Niro on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert on Michael Bloomberg's run.
I like Bloomberg. He's an adult. He's a grown-up. Yeah. We just have to get past this, get over the hump into calm waters. And so, to me, Bloomberg might be the one.
All right. So what do you think? Richard, I'll let you have that.
You know, I think Democrats are kind of torn because I think there's a sense of solidity about Michael Bloomberg that, frankly, is, to many Democrats and independents and some Republicans, a counterweight to what they see in the White House now. On the other hand, the notion that you're going to skip these early contests and just take your tens and tens of millions of dollars of your personal fortune and put it into ads as a way to somehow sell yourself without going, in a retail fashion, kind of does rub some people the wrong way, a lot of people the wrong way. So, and the polls so far don't indicate that he's making that much of a mark.
All right, Matt, final thought.
I think it's great that Michael Bloomberg is throwing his hat in the ring. I think he has zero chance of getting the Democratic nomination, but he could run in the general election as an independent. I think it would give people that like him a chance to vote for him, and I encourage him to do it.
Richard,
I'm sure you do.
And Matt Schlapp, thanks to both of you. Have a wonderful holiday.
You too, Sandra.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too. Well, the president accusing Democrats of dragging their feet on passing the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. Democrats have been negotiating, we know, with the White House for months now on the trade deal. Pelosi says she is waiting for final written commitments from the administration. The speaker issuing a statement with this, saying, "We are within range of a substantially improved agreement for America's workers. Now we need to see our progress in writing from the trade representative for final review." Let's bring in White House trade advisor Peter Navarro. Peter, it's been a while since we caught up. So
beautiful day here at the White House.
It does look like a sunny, beautiful day.
For the holiday.
So give us an update, though, before we all head off to eat our turkey. Where do things stand today?
Sure. So we've got the Seinfeld impeachment. It's about nothing, but one of the biggest casualties so far of Nancy Pelosi has been USMCA. The opportunity cost of not passing that is about 200,000 jobs, largely concentrated in the auto industry, plus a lot of great relief for dairy farmers in Wisconsin, wheat growers in Kansas. I mean, it's one of the best deals ever. It's been sitting on her desk. It's encouraging, I suppose, that she's saying that it's near the finish line or it's imminent. here's what I can tell you. Ambassador Robert Lighthizer is ready to go. He's working with them. We should be optimistic, and let's see what happens.
So why is it stalling?
Nancy Pelosi. She's look here.
She says she's waiting for final review. So who's dragging their feet?
Here's the thing. You can either spend all your time in Congress investigating or legislating. And so far, the Pelosi shift Congress has just burned days and days and days away. If you simply passed a drug pricing bill, you'd save seniors like $1 trillion. If you simply passed an infrastructure bill, that'd be like $1.5 trillion injection in the economy, 2% GDP growth rate. I'm really concerned, Sandra, that they're not getting a budget for fiscal year 2020. They're doing these continuing resolutions. One of my equities here at the White House is helping our shipbuilders in Philly, in Marinette, Wisconsin, in Pascagoula, and these continuing resolutions are like a wooden stake in a vampire's heart to the shipbuilding industry. It's just horrible. It's not the White House that's holding this up. President Trump did his job months ago. He kept the campaign promise to renegotiate NAFTA. Great, but yeah, promises made, promises kept. Ambassador Lighthizer saw him an hour ago. He's raring to go. He'll do whatever he needs to do to give them what they need to get confident about
whatever they want them to do. I mean, that sounds like sounds like a big negotiating.
Meaning that if they want paper on the deal, yeah. I mean, this is a great deal. It's got strong enforcement.
But the concern you hear from markets is what it, and sorry to interrupt you, Peter.
Sure.
We're limited on time here. But as far as a compromise, the markets have shown some concern, day to day, you get market movements on what a compromise really looks like. What at this point does that look like?
I wouldn't worry about that at all. And what I mean by what Ambassador Lighthizer will give them what they want, which is assurances about enforcement. That's the only issue at stake here. That's it. And so 3 months ago, that issue was a concern. Now, it's just an excuse, Sandra. We're ready to go. It's locked and loaded. All it takes is Nancy Pelosi to pull the trigger. Now, tell you what.
But the president warned that as this drags, Canada and Mexico could pull out. Is that a real threat? Is that a real possibility?
That is a real threat. I mean, look, we just had Japan, a lower house of Japan's diet, pass the Japan deal that we signed a couple of months ago. I mean, the Japanese Parliament and the Mexican Congress are moving faster than Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff. And it's like, what's wrong with that picture? There's only so many legislative days in the calendar, and when you burn them on the Seinfeld impeachment, what you're doing is you're burning the American people.
Got it.
We got a great opportunity here to deliver a great holiday present to our farmers, ranchers, manufacturers, and workers.
We've got to leave
Come on,
it there.
Nancy, you can do it.
Well, Mexico's president is said to also be issuing a letter to Pelosi this week to urge her to get something done and approve the USMCA. So we will
Send
be
it
following
special
up on
delivery.
that. Peter Navarro, great to catch up with you. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, sir. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Department of State right now taking questions. A moment ago, he talked about an American who was hobbled 2 days ago, and now he is slamming Iranian leadership for the crackdown on protesters in the streets. Let's drop in for questions now.
Ambassador Yovanovitch from Ukraine. Wondering, did you discuss Ambassador Yovanovitch in those calls with Mayor Giuliani, and did the State Department then mislead or misinform Congress as to the circumstances of her departure in the 2 letters that were sent to Steny Hoyer and Eliot Engel? Thank you.
As for Hong Kong, I think the administration has been pretty clear about our expectations about how Beijing will treat people throughout the country. We have human rights standards that we apply all across the world, and Hong Kong is no different. In addition, in Hong Kong, we have the commitments that the Chinese government made as part of their obligations to maintain one country and 2 systems. That's what we're continuing to work towards. Congress has now taken action since before the president. I won't get out in front of what he will do before too long. But suffice to say, I think the administration's policies have been pretty unambiguous, and our support for the Chinese Communist Party's continued commitment to the promises that they made remains unwavering. And I think you saw that from the people of Hong Kong this past week. That's what they're asking for, too, the continued maintenance of the understandings that were committed to under international law. I don't have much to say with respect to the Ukraine investigation. Other than this, we've continued to comply with all the legal requirements. You saw we released documents, I guess it was last week now. We'll continue to do that as required by law and as appropriate, so that appropriate oversight can be conducted. But with respect to the larger set of issues, we had a very clear policy with respect to Ukraine, and we executed it successfully. There are still many challenges. We still have Russians in the Donbass. We still have a president in Ukraine working to make sure that we move through the challenges that the country's had with its corruption for an awfully long time now. State Department's been working on that for my now year and a half plus here, and we'll continue to work on it. And every action that I took and have taken will continue to be driven towards that objective.
Thank you.
Voice of America? Go ahead. No, Voice of America, thank you.
Hi, I'm with the Voice of America. So, Reporters Without Border strongly condemned today the Iranian intelligence threats against journalists working for the international media like Voice of America, BBC, Radio Free Europe, and Manitou, with intimidation on social media and relatives in Iran, summoned for interrogation. What's your take on it?
So I've seen those reports, and I've certainly seen the Iranians engage in activity that is fundamentally at odds with central understandings we have here in America about how the press ought to be treated. So I don't know that I have much more to add other than the entirety of how the president has thought about the Middle East and the malevolent activity of the Islamic Republic of Iran drives towards working to eradicate what you just described. What we've advocated for inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran is a change in the behavior of the regime. Behave like a normal nation, which permits its people to engage in commerce, to take care of their families, that would have normal press freedoms. Those are the very, very objectives that our policy has been aimed at for the entire time of the Trump administration. We'll keep working on. When I see those reports, it reminds me that our work is certainly not yet complete.
Mr. Secretary, two
Yes, sir.
questions. One on Turkey. Now that Turkey is testing the S-400, and it looks to be on F-16s, is that cause for concern, and will the U.S. take any action in response, possibly levying sanctions? And the other, just going back to Ukraine, do you believe that the U.S. and Ukraine should investigate the theory that it was Ukraine and not Russia that hacked the DNC emails in 2016?
So I'll take a second question first. Anytime there is information that indicates that any country has messed with American elections, we not only have a right but a duty to make sure we chase that down. And I served as the CIA director for the first year and a half of this administration. I can assure you there were many countries that were actively engaged in trying to undermine American democracy, our rule of law, the fundamental understandings we have here in the United States. And you should know we were diligently working to make sure that we addressed each of them with every tool of American power that we had. And so whomever it is, by the way, it's not just, I said nations, I think. It's not just state actors. There are non-state actors too.
Guys, I'm sorry. I don't know where the feed is on this. This is crazy.
Turkey and the S-400, yeah, it's concerning. We are hopeful. We're still talking to the Turks. We're still trying to figure our way through this thing. I don't want to get out in front of what the president may or may not do, but we have made very clear to the Turkish government our desire to see them move away from the putting into full operationalization the S-400 weapon system. Yes, ma'am.
Thanksgiving to
Thank you.
Secretary.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well.
On Hong Kong, a quick follow-up. Would you recommend President Trump to endorse the bipartisan legislation on the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act? The reason I ask is because if it's enacted, it will require Secretary of State to certify if Hong Kong retains enough autonomy for favorable trading terms. And separately, if I may, on Xinjiang, as you just mentioned, new league of documents published by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, ICIJ, revealed the strategy behind a campaign of re-education on Muslim minority groups. Would you say the U.S. pressures have had any effect on China's actions in Xinjiang? And does the new document allow more concrete actions to take against China? Thank you.
Yeah. So your first question is, I can't really answer it because you point out quite correctly in the second part of that question that issue will come to me if this were to become law, if the president signs it, or if it becomes law. That will come to me. I'll have to make this determination. I don't want to prejudge that. I want to make sure that the process here can be run in a fair, neutral way, and no one thinks that the Secretary of State got out in front of the analysis that will be tasked annually to do under that statute to evaluate whether the requirements there can be certified to. So we're aware of it. Our teams already have a lot of the foundational activity in place that we can perform, I think, a pretty thorough analysis pretty quickly. To see if that certification can be made and if in fact this becomes law. And when we do, we'll make that. That'll be a published certification. We'll send it to Capitol Hill as required by statute. Your second question is about what's the effects of this newly released information. I think there are really a couple. First, I think it confirms what we've been saying here at the State Department and the United States government for some time now about what's taking place there. The very significant human rights abuses. I think it confirms it, shows that it's not random and it is intentional and that it is ongoing. And so I think those papers simply confirm that. I think the world can see that, which leads me to the second point. I think it's the case now that you'll see many more countries around the world acknowledging what's taking place there and working alongside of the United States to create space and improve human rights conditions for the people of Xinjiang.
This is nothing new.
The release of those papers will encourage.
I don't understand why.
We view as a very important outcome that we're trying to achieve. Yes, ma'am.
I have a comment for the department on the new numbers reports coming out of Xinjiang. There's new information out there that the Communist Party has detained over time up to 1 million Uyghurs. Does State Department have anything on that number?
So our best analysis that the number of 1 million is a reasonable number to think about the number of persons that have been over the extended period of time held or detained or wrongfully denied their fundamental human rights. We think that number's about right.
So and just a quick follow-up, sir. The president tweeted just a short while ago that he'd encourage you essentially to testify in the impeachment investigation. Is that something you're considering?
When the time is right, all good things happen.
Thank you.
There is the news. The question from Jillian Turner from Fox News there about impeachment and whether or not he would testify. When the news is right, he will go forth. Prior to that, Hong Kong, Iran, and specifically on Ukraine, he said we had a very clear policy on Ukraine.
Guys, I gotta say, this is nothing new, and if you're shocked or like blown away by inhumane rights in China against the Uyghurs or anything like that, this is nothing new. The issue is that when you couple with let me mute this side because it's confusing. So the issue is that when you couple fair trade deals or free trade deals with China or the Trans-Pacific Partnership or NAFTA or anything like that, you open the door to corporate entities going overseas and essentially melding the economy. So then it becomes convoluted. The problem becomes more complex. So it isn't as simple as saying, well, there's all these inhumane things going on in this nation, so the United States of America, this great big powerhouse that we are, we should just go in there and stop it all. It gets a lot more convoluted than that because, your pretty little iPhone that you use, well, I got news for you. It's built and assembled. It might be assembled in the United States, but a lot of the parts that are inside of this thing are from China. So you go to war with China, you don't get no more iPhones. You know, a lot of the manufacturing and stuff like that that's overseas, that built this Dell computer that I'm using, it's not going to exist anymore. None of the new stuff that's going to come. Say we go to a 10 or a 15-year war because, you know, there's been a million Uyghurs. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do anything. What I'm saying is that there's consequences to the actions that we're taking, and you got to think about secondary and tertiary effects. You just can't say, oh, well, you know, a million people are affected by this. Let's go lay the hammer down. There's a lot more to it, guys. It's not that simple. You know, when we talk about these things, we need to think about these things holistically. We need to think about these things in secondary and tertiary effects, and we need to think about these things like, well, you know, our economies are melded together in the sense that we are the consumer. Our American owners and business owners reside in the United States. However, the business is overseas in China. The manufacturing is overseas in China, where they produce the product that they sell, to which they get rich off of. So that's the issue. Those manufacturing plants and all those other things that are overseas, you know, that's going to come to a halt if we get involved in any of this stuff. And I'll just end it here with saying, if, you know, earlier this morning, I was watching Fox News, and let me just type this out here. So, as I said right there, you know, there's a couple of Democrats that are actually rethinking about this whole impeachment thing because, well, obviously there's no evidence. There's no evidence, you know, of an impeachment. The best they got is, oh, well, you know, maybe he withheld a White House meeting because the Ukrainians said that they had no idea that the aid was even being held. So if they have no idea the aid was even being held, how can there be a quid pro quo? And more certainly, how could there be a bribe? Like, literally, you have to tell the guy, hey, I'm going to withhold the aid if you don't do this. That's the bribe. Like, the legal definition of the bribe. You have to be like, hey, if you don't do this, I'm going to withhold the aid. They even said they didn't know the aid was being held. So that's off the table. And the same with extortion. That's off the table. So at best, they have circumstantial evidence that a White House meeting was being withheld, which could easily be debunked probably by President Trump's schedule. So, I mean, whatever. So the Democrats are like, oh, crap, now it's going to go to the Senate, and they're going to hold their hearings, and they're going to bring more and more people into this. Adam Schiff is going to come into this, although he's adamantly against testifying in the Senate. He says, well, there's nothing else that I can bring to it, although he knew the whistleblower before the whistleblower filed the complaint. All right, and just to let you guys know where I'm at with all of this, I believe personally that Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, who was part of the National Security Council, whose responsibility was to draft talking points on Ukraine. Ukraine is part of his what they call the portfolio, where he. Now, nothing against the man. I'm not talking about his loyalty to the United States. Okay, listen, just follow my thoughts here. Okay, so Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman was a natural-born Ukrainian. He immigrated over to the United States at the age of like 3. He grew up as an American, as most immigrant Americans do, right? Where most Americans are immigrants, and he decided that he wanted to join the United States Army. Great, awesome, that's great. He makes his way through the ranks as an officer, and he becomes part of the National Security Council. Excuse me. And his responsibility is to draft talking points on Ukraine on behalf of the National Security Council. He's not the end-all, be-all on talking points Ukraine. It goes through the channels. It goes through Tim Morrison. It goes through a couple other people. Mick Mulvaney, I think, maybe. Possibly even the Secretary of State. And then Ambassador Bolton is in there somewhere. And then eventually it lands on the president's desk. Well, we all know that the president goes wayward on talking points. So let's listen in on Senator Kennedy. Oh, I got muted over here.
Senator John Kennedy, last hour with us here, saying an impeachment trial in the Senate will be swift if it actually happens. Conviction not considered likely. Moments ago, President Trump weighing in on that fight, saying he'd love to have Mike Pompeo, Rick Perry, Mick Mulvaney, and many others testify about the phony impeachment hoax. That on Twitter. Florida.
So at the end of the interview with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, you hear him say all good things happen for those who wait or whatever, basically implying that they're not going to get what they want. And by they, I mean the Democrats. So the reality is, Senator Rick Scott, here we go. Let's listen to what he's got to say.
Trump committed, so I think it'll be very difficult to convict him.
We are finding this Marist poll, we put this up a short time ago, this independents now in America that were polled. 42% support it, 50% are against it. There's also a CNN poll out there today. They suggest in their polling there's been no change between October and now, suggesting 50%.
And so, again, with the polling, it's changed, and they oppose it. And you could take your best guess as to why these polls have shifted. One, no one believes in them. It's garbage. They're garbage polls. I don't know where the poll data comes from. That drives me nuts. If anybody that watches this show can tell me where Politico gets their information, Gallup, any of them, where they get their information, because to my knowledge, I don't think I've ever been asked, hey, am I in favor of impeachment? Now, I've gotten, crap emails. Excuse me. I yawn when I talk a lot, so please forgive me. So I get these crap emails, and it comes from all walks of news agencies, basically. Not ask me about questions and stuff like that. So it's not Gallup, it's not Politico, it's not anything. I don't know who these people are, and then of course the vast majority of them are Republican anyway. So that's because I'm part of the Republican Party, and I signed up for whatever crap that I want to get information from. So with that being said, I want to know where it comes from. I want to know, what do they go out there to these cities and stuff like that, and they ask these, they have these. Now I've been to Manhattan, and I've seen firsthand guys standing on the street corners, asking questions. Now here's the irony, guys. Okay, There's let me tell you a little bit about intelligence that we used to do. Okay, we used to do this thing called the time wheel analysis. Okay, and the time wheel analysis was this tool that we would use that would help us isolate when the when, this is very important to understand, when the IEDs were in place. Okay, when the IEDs were there. But what we found out is that the time wheel analysis didn't tell us what we thought it was going to tell us. It actually told us when our convoys were there. Does that make sense? Because our convoys would get hit by the IEDs, so we had no idea when the IEDs were actually in place. They could have been there a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before that and ran no routes, no convoys on that route for 2 weeks. And then the first convoy to run that route gets hit. And so we placed that on the timeline. So it didn't tell us what we thought it was going to tell us. And when you take a pollster and you stick them in the heart of a Democratic-controlled city and ask 1,000 Democrats what they think, you're not getting this full picture. You're just getting what Democrats think. Likewise, with Republicans, it doesn't matter. You take somebody out there and you stick them in the heart of a Republican, I'm not going to say city, because if you look at the electoral map or even the districts that voted, I mean, most cities are Democrats, so you'd have to put them out in Ruralville, USA, and ask, I guess, 10 people, because it would take you all day to drive 3 miles through the cornfields to the next neighbor. Therein lies the problem. So these guys who are asking these questions about polls, about how people feel, they are not going to these places where you got to drive 3 or 4 miles to get to the next neighbor to ask them the question. And even if you did, and even if you've managed to get to the front door, you might be greeted with a shotgun. Hey, hey there, what are you doing on my property? You stealing my apples again? Boy, I'll shoot you out. You know what I'm saying? You don't know that. So, not to stereotype, guys. I apologize if you're watching this. I just thought it would be funny to see, some reporter, creep up on your property and then you greet him with a shotgun. Forgive me for the accent, but so anyway, the point of the matter is that they are not going to spend an eternity trying to collect information in the Midwest and these places where there's not very dense population centers, because all they got to do is go to the cities where there's a dense population city, and they could get 1,000, 2,000 signatures or check marks or whatever it is, and then they're done for the day. So these pollsters can go right into this city and say, okay, well, I gotta get 1,000 signatures today. I'm gonna go. You know what, dude? I'm gonna go stand on the corner of 82nd and whatever road it is in Manhattan, and I'm gonna get them in like that. Counter argument that somebody might make is that Manhattan is highly inundated with tourism, so it's not necessarily the residents that are there that are signing these polls, and that you could theoretically get people from all walks of life that just want to travel to New York and see what it's like. And I could agree to that point, but I still don't think it's an accurate way of judging, because you're only going to get those who, with an affinity for New York City, who want to travel to New York City, who think New York City is a fine city, and then you might end up with, like minds. So, with that being said, that's my 2 cents on the facts, guys. At the end of the day, where I sit right now is President Trump probably going to get impeached. There are some Democrats that are thinking, maybe we shouldn't vote for this. And that's because they're going to take away from the campaigns in the primaries. No coverage. No one had watched the last debate. And by no one, I mean like I don't know what the ratings were, but no one, very little people watched it. No one necessarily cares about the impeachment because they're 11 months away. So by the time the hearings in the Senate are over with, we're at like November 7th. So like we're 3 months away from we could be 3 months away from voting, or we could be like at election day, where it's time to vote. So it's like, so they're taking away from their own party is what I'm saying. So there's going to be defectors in the Democratic Party that say, yeah, no, we're not going to vote on this. So it's going to be a big waste of time. There's going to be a big black eye in Adam Schiff. Now, so reportedly, he did a Sunday show where he thinks that it's probably not a good idea, I guess. I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not really sure exactly what it is that he said, but he seems to think that it's probably not going to go in his favor anyways. So I'm thinking the president's going to be impeached, but I wouldn't be shocked if he wasn't. But if it goes to the Senate, now it opens up a whole new ballgame because now we got Representative Adam Schiff who's going to get called. We got potentially the whistleblower who will be called, maybe behind closed doors, maybe whatever process that they're going to take that keeps his anonymity, which as I got a whole issue with that. I'm going to go on a tangent if I don't stop. And then we also got Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and then we all, and those guys are important because it goes to the intent of what President Trump had, what he meant on the phone conversation. That's why it's important. If, in fact, corruption was present, then he had every right. If he had reasonable suspicion, reasonable belief that corruption existed with a senior U.S. politician in a foreign country, which was embezzling and laundering U.S. taxpayer money, and Trump knew about it, he has a sworn duty to investigate. Sworn duty to investigate. So therein lies the question. Did he have reasonable suspicion to look into this? And we also know that quid pro quo didn't exist. So that's why it's important for Hunter Biden and Joe Biden to testify. That's why it's important. If you don't think that it's important for them, I just spelled it out for you. If you don't quite get it, sorry about your luck, but that's the way it is. So they got to go to the Senate, and the Democrats don't want that either. So at that point, there's going to be due process. The White House counsel is going to be present. Mr. President is going to be there. Oh, by the way, Secretary Perry, Secretary of State Pompeo, and Mick Mulvaney, he's all going to be there. They're all going to be there. And guess what? They're all going to testify to the facts. And guess what else? We also know why the aid was lifted, because of the senators, not because of anything else. So we got a whole lot of facts on our side up in the Senate. And the only reason why the White House wasn't cooperating with executive privilege and they were putting, holds on whether or not certain people could testify or not like that, it was because it was a kangaroo court. It was a kangaroo court, guys. That was it. That there was nothing more to it than that. They weren't trying to hide anything. It was, first of all, don't forget, it started behind closed doors in a skiff with secret depositions, okay, guys? And if you don't know, the impeachment process, the precedent for impeachment process starts with the Judiciary Committee, not the Intelligence Committee. And in this case, it was with the Intelligence Committee, which is what they used. They used the secrecy of the Intelligence Committee to hold these hearings in the SCIF, which is insane. Insane, guys. Insane. If you really, truly wanted a true, honest to God impeachment inquiry, why not have the Judiciary Committee hold the hearings? That's what they do. That's the whole point. I don't understand. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on the facts, guys. Going on a lot of tangents here. You heard Secretary of State Mike Pompeo testify. Listen, you know, humanitarian issues have been going on in China for a very long time. And they censor their internet. They make it very difficult for any voices from the inside of China to get out of China. So why you're not aware of what it is that's going on is because of that simple fact. They used, the Muslims were using an app, I forget what it was called, to download the Quran and the Sunnah and all this stuff, the basic Muslim literature or Islamic literature to teach themselves about, you know, the way of Islam and all this. And they were caught using this illegal app. So this is stuff that's been going on in China for a very long time. It's not anything new. They censor the internet in any broadcast like that. So anything that gets leaked out of China, anything like that, trust me, it's if the person's found, the person's probably going to get in a serious amount of trouble. And for the United States to just go in there and do something about it, it's really convoluted, guys. You guys got to understand, it's not a zero-sum game. You just can't say, yep, let's do it. Let's go. Let's go. They're treating these people wrong. Let's do it. That's what you really want to say. That's what you really want to do. And I get you. I feel you. I feel it in my heart that you know, let's put an end to that stuff. Let's just, you know, whatever. But like I said, they make these things. They make this thing that I'm using. They make this thing, you know, they make this thing. It's, you go in there, you go to war, and all of the luxuries that we have are gone. Gone. All the manufacturing's done in China, Taiwan. It's gone. It's gone like that, up in smoke. So how about we start working on getting manufacturing back over into the United States, where we could create jobs, where it's fair, get rid of these horrible trade deals, and we bring back U.S. jobs and we bring back manufacturing, so that way when China does the things that China does, the United States has more clout, the United States has more power, and it's not just, you know, and I'm not talking militarily. Militarily, toe-to-toe, we'd probably kill them. But, you know, and people say, oh, well, there's like 7 billion of them, so, you know, they could just keep running waves of Chinamen at us and we would die. We'd be overrun. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that's like ridiculous. Nobody fights like that. So, anyway, the fact of the matter is that it would be just not a good war for any party involved. Probably for China, most definitely for China. But then manufacturing would cease, and any exports out of China into the United States would cease, and all of the stuff that it takes to build and manufacture and assemble all these things would stop. So, what do we do? So that's the problem, guys. And I want to make something painfully clear. The equipment, the circuit boards, the things that are assembled, that are used, not insensitive stuff, okay? I don't want you to get it confused. Not insensitive stuff, but in certain government and unclassified realms in the government, and it is highly scanned and overlooked. But the stuff is assembled in China. The stuff is made in China, and we use it in the government every day. So think about that. If we go to war with China, the stuff that the government uses, if as it decays, they're not replacing it anymore. There's no more manufacturing. So there's no more exports out of China. There's no more imports into the United States from the manufacturing that we have overseas. This is the inherent problem that we have right now. And this is what the NBA was seeing, because there's like a stupid amount of people that live over in China, a huge market for the NBA, and they're saying, okay, well, Hong Kong issues and things like that, and the owner of one of the teams, or was it the owner or the coach? Well, I think it was the owner that testified or that tweeted something about the freedom of Hong Kongers, and China was like, oh, we're not gonna do this in China anymore, and they're like, oh my God, we're so sorry. The NFL was like, oh no, we're so sorry, China, we love you. And that's the problem, right? It's all about money. It's all about money in China. So, anyways, guys, that's my 2 cents on the whole matter. I think that we need to seriously start to look at if we're gonna handle the humanity issues in China with the Uyghurs, with Muslims, and all this other stuff. We need to take a seriously hard look at our position in manufacturing and start to bring back our manufacturing goods. We need to start raising tariffs on imports from manufacturers from specific countries, i.e. China, in Taiwan. And Taiwan is an autonomous country, or is an autonomous region of China, and or their own country, I guess. But they're their own country, but China believes that they're an autonomous region of China. So, anyways. Why was my payment declined? So, anyways, I saw it on my phone. I'm like, I didn't order anything. What? Anyway, if we're gonna get anywhere, we gotta bring manufacturing jobs back overseas so we could get some more clout. That's my 2 cents on the matter, guys. Listen, if the impeachment goes through in the House and they go and they vote and the Democrats say yay, and it moves forward to the Senate, it's going to get squashed there. But I hope to God that the Senate Judiciary Committee brings forth all of the all of the people that I mentioned before to testify, and we really get down to the bottom of the nitty gritty. I obviously know that there's nothing here. There's just nothing. It's just going to embarrass the Democrats, and it's going to take up all the candidates' time to run on their campaigns, and nobody's going to listen to anything they're going to say. And who's Bloomberg? Who is Bloomberg? Bloomberg, guys, if for the love of God, you've made it this far in my live stream, and you're a Democrat, I seriously doubt you made it this far. But if you have, thank you so much for keeping an open mind. Thank you so much for listening. You may agree on some points, you may disagree on some points, but here's the thing. You got to ask yourself, why is a billionaire all of a sudden going to skip the first 4 states where he's not going to run on any of the ballots? Okay, he's going to spend millions of dollars, okay, from Kansas or whatever state it is beyond, all right, to try and catch up so that way he can become elected, or the candidate for the primary, and he's a billionaire, and he's running against all the other socialists. It's because he disagrees with all the other socialists. He disagrees with being taxed the 1%. He doesn't want his money going anywhere. He wants to be the moderate Democrat. So no matter what junk he says, no matter what diarrhea he spews about what policies he's going to do, he's looking out for number one. Who else is going to have all these billions and billions and billions of dollars and all of a sudden out of nowhere skip the first 4 states and decide, oh yeah, I'm going to run against all of these socialists because they're going to try and tax me and they're going to take all my money from me? Think about that. If that's not common sense and this guy just comes out of nowhere, I don't know what is. And you can't just say, oh, well, you know what? The Democratic field is just in disarray. They're all over the place. I really know what I'm talking about. I really like Joe Biden. He was a moderate, but he's, losing his marbles. God bless him. He's 70-something years old. It's tough for him to sit down and rest. Bernie Sanders, he just put out there like a crazy tax plan. He said anybody over who makes over $29,000 is going to get taxed like buku bucks. You might as well just sign over your check to the government. And then Warren, God forbid she tells the truth. Who knows what lie she's going to come up with next? And then you got Pete Buttigieg, probably one of the only semi-quasi, moderate Democrats that makes somewhat sense, but he only runs on counterpoints. He only runs on things that you and I hopefully already know that, this crap is garbage, but he doesn't say anything else. He doesn't say, why, yeah, that crap's garbage, but please tell me, what you think is going to work, what it is. Medicare for all who want it is what he says. That's like the one thing he does. Medicare for all who want it. So we have Medicare now. We're going to open the doors for anybody who wants to apply for it. How do you pay for that? How do you pay for that? Isn't that sort of the system we got now? Although we have like a condition where it's like, yeah, you can get Medicare, but you have to be sort of broke. You can't make more than this amount of money. Which I think, by the way, the threshold should be lifted. I think the poverty level, I think that's our problem. I think the poverty level should be lifted across the board, because then there would be more assistance, and that would just help out a lot of people across the board. And I think that would just be a zero-sum game, because I think in a lot of cases, in a lot of areas, in a lot of places, where people are making like $30,000 of or $32,000 or $35,000, it's just not cutting it, because people who are coming in from various places with their own rich monies and retirements and stuff like that are buying up all these properties, cost of living's going up, and they can't compete. So that's the reason why I think that. So anyway, I'm getting on a tangent. I'm going to let you guys go. Those are my thoughts. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching American Overwatch. Thank you for listening to my thoughts. Okay, if you enjoy what it is that we do, please show your support. Please like and share the video. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell for new notifications as we upload videos. And also, if you want to be a Patreon supporter, we would love it. Show us some support through some donations. Over here on the top right-hand portion of the screen is our Patreon account. Please visit us there. And again, thank you. We love you. And we'll see you on the next one.